Hello everyone, and welcome to episode 5 in series 1 of Roopa Vyas-Smith Does Coffee Chai Chat. Today's topic is chronic illness, and my original intention was to talk with 3 or 4 people individually for 10 to 15 minutes and ask lovely Maria to put each of the recordings together to create one program. However, I changed my mind after I interviewed the first contributor, who you will meet shortly. It struck me that a half-hour segment, as my interview with my next contributor became, on one chronic illness may make for a much more user-friendly program and would allow quality time to think about one condition and someone's experience of it as a standalone piece. So that's what we've done. So I'll see you again at the end. Do have a listen next, and I'm sure you will find the conversation with this contributor very powerful, very humbling, and honest, with moments of feeling sad and also moments of feeling inspired too. So I'll see you a little bit later. Hi everybody, today's topic is chronic illness, how people diagnosed, how they manage their chronic illness, and I'm incredibly grateful to everyone who's contributing to this topic. My contributor today, and someone who I can call a friend, but sadly I haven't been in touch with recently, is a lovely young man who is going to introduce himself now and tell us his medical diagnosis around his chronic illness and condition. So over to you.
So my name's Hastie, and I've been diagnosed with Crohn's disease since I was 19, so knocking on for about 15 years now, and also a recent diagnosis of gastroparesis. I don't know how much you know about both of those things.
It would be really helpful if you could share a little of those conditions, Hastie, because there may be people that will watch this that are also managing them and they'll know, but I think a lot of people may not have an idea of what that is.
No, of course. So Crohn's disease is it's an autoimmune disease. It's your body's immune system essentially attacking itself, and it affects anywhere in your digestive tract. And it causes ulceration and inflammation, and that can lead to lots of complications. Like the symptoms often are like losing weight, constant diarrhea, things like that. Is poo. No one likes talking about it, but you should do, because it's your health at the end of the day.
It is, and life.
No, exactly. And so, ulceration. So my Crohn's was always in my large intestine, and I went through all the kind of traditional medications quite quickly, and I ended up having to have surgery to remove a section of my large bowel, and I ended up with a colostomy, so like a bag that collects your body's waste. And then 3 years later, I had further surgery to remove the rest of my large intestine, and ended up with an ileostomy, which is the same kind of thing. And recently I was diagnosed with gastroparesis, which is the partial or total paralysis of the stomach. And it's the motility in the gastrointestinal tract that has slowed right down. And it causes things like a lot of nausea, struggling to keep food down. It can cause quite bad pain. And obviously, like, it goes hand in hand with weight loss and things like that. So like currently I'm 58 kilos, which is the lowest I've weighed in probably nearly 10 years, because I'm struggling to get the calories I need to sustain my weight, basically. And in, I think, about 8 days, I'm being fitted with a nasojejunal feeding tube, which is a tube that goes up your nose, down your throat, through your stomach and into your small intestine, and you're fed through that tube, potentially 24 hours a day, to kind of get the calorific intake you need to put the weight on. Just because I can't tolerate it by eating it normally. But yeah, so that's quite a new diagnosis for me. So I'm trying to wrap my head around that at the moment. But the Crohn's disease I've managed for quite a long time. And actually my Crohn's disease at the moment is actually under control. It's well managed. It's not too bad. The biggest problems I'm having at the moment is with this new diagnosis of gastroparesis. But they're both chronic conditions long term. They'll never go, they will never go away. They may go into remission for periods of time, and I will be less symptomatic and, essentially lead a normal kind of lifestyle and have a normal quality of life. But there are other times where they will flare up quite badly, and I will experience a lot more symptoms like weight loss, things like that. But yeah, so that's basically where I'm at the moment.
Thank you, Hastie. And I mean, we met a few years back when we both worked for a charitable organisation. And when I met you and you'd shared this part of your story with me, I was really impressed and just felt kind of very proud of you as somebody who was an outsider to your life and who had gotten to know you as to how you've been managing this. And I can't thank you enough for sharing your story with us today. And also, I knew about the Crohn's, but this new diagnosis, as you say, you're just wrapping your head around that. And I can imagine that that's kind of taking its time, and will do, and we'll explore that a little bit further in the next couple of questions. So just to ask you about when your Crohn's started, how old were you, Hastie, when that started?
So I was 19 in my second year, going into my second year of university.
Okay. And do you remember how you felt at the time when you were given this diagnosis?
Yeah, I mean, I remember going through a few tests, like having endoscopies, so the camera down the throat and things like that. And I remember the kind of my doctor at the time saying, "Oh yeah, Crohn's disease, that's the one we don't want." And that's all I knew, was it was the one we didn't want. Yeah, that's what it turned out to be. And I kind of, I wasn't overly fazed by it. I kind of thought, oh, it's all right. It'll be something we can solve by taking some medication, treating it, I didn't realize what a long slog it would be, and actually how difficult it can be to manage. And I know it varies wildly from person to person. One person might only need to alter their diet to manage it. Whereas you go right to the other end of the spectrum, where I nearly am, where I've gone through all the traditional medications very quickly. None of them have really had a significant impact, and I've had to end up having surgery to resolve it. Which, for the first 6 years of being diagnosed, it was hell. Like, it was never under control. I could barely leave the house because I was constantly worrying about going to the loo. If I tell you I was going to the loo up to like 60, 70 times a day with very little warning. And I was losing so much weight. I ended up with a feeding tube at that point in time, just to put some weight on. And in that first 6 years, I really started to struggle with it because I couldn't see a light at the end of the tunnel type thing. Couldn't see it getting better. And I fought the surgery off, because if you tell a 25-year-old man that you're going to have a colostomy bag for the rest of your life, that's quite something to wrap your head around, and you want to avoid it at all costs. In hindsight, I wish I'd had the surgery done sooner, because it gave me my quality of life back overnight. But yeah, at the beginning it was very difficult, and it's like a period of grieving almost, like, for who you were and what you were. Like, I wanted to join the army, and the day before I sent my paperwork off was the day I was diagnosed, and obviously that is on their list of not allowed illnesses, so that kind of scuppered my plans that I'd had for life. And I've kind of worked around it ever since.
That's an incredibly kind of difficult time for you. And it's very interesting when you said about how at 25, having struggled with this diagnosis and managing it for the 6 years, and understandably so, I can imagine others that are of that kind of age group and being told that they may need to have surgery and have a colostomy bag. It isn't where your headspace is at the time. So actually then making a decision to do that and thinking, oh, maybe it would have been an idea. I mean, perhaps if there's anybody watching this again who's thinking about that, it's really useful to hear about, kind of your decision process and your experience.
It definitely would help, like, if in hindsight, maybe talking, and I did talk to people that had the surgery and stuff like that, and it was so much of a reassurance that actually you can lead a totally normal life, and in fact your life will get so much better. You know. And actually I suppose I was almost lucky in the sense that I had the decision taken out of my hands. Surgeons basically said you need to have this done, or at some point your bowel is going to perforate and you will not be in a good way. You could end up dying. I was like, okay, well, got to do it then, don't we?
Yeah. And can I ask how old you are now, Hastie?
So I'm 33 at the moment. So
you had this operation done about 8 years ago?
Yes, when I was 25, I had my first surgery. And then 3 years later, I had a further surgery to remove the rest of my large bowel.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. And we'll talk a little bit about perhaps your other diagnosis. I know that's been very, very recent.
Yeah.
And you're, as you say, you're just grappling with that at the moment, getting your head around that. When you were diagnosed with that, I mean, was it in this last year during?
Yeah, so I've probably been suffering with symptoms of it maybe for a year and a half, but I kind of only really had a kind of formal definitive diagnosis maybe within the last 6 to 8 months.
Yes.
And I think even at this point in time, you know, my doctors maybe aren't entirely sure if it is exactly gastroparesis. You know, technically it's all the diagnostic testing they've done shows symptoms of it. So, you know, I'm 90% certain it is what it is. But it's interesting, the more research I do around it, the more daunting it looks at some points. You know, because I've struggled to eat solid food now for the last year. I've been on predominantly liquids for the last year, which has been difficult. And I'm trying to, you know, I've tried to introduce foods into my diet, but it's basically like Russian roulette. One day I can eat something and it'll be fine. I could eat it the same thing 4 days later and I could be in absolute agony to the point I end up having to go to A&E to get the pain managed. You know, I mean, I'm taking morphine at home, which, you know, is actually not good for it because it's an opiate. So it slows down your gastrointestinal tract and the motility through it. But it's catch-22, need to manage the pain. But yeah, so it's quite a difficult one because because of COVID as well. You know, it's been not difficult to speak to doctors, but obviously it's not been maybe as easy as it normally is, and to get testing and things done. So I felt like I've been kind of finding my own way a bit. But you know, but the team that I am seen by are like, I think they're absolutely brilliant. I trust them with my life implicitly. They're very good at what they do. But it's just a bit of a crazy time at the moment, I suppose, for everyone.
Yeah, I think adding kind of the you know, that the whole COVID situation and this global pandemic on top of things that people are, you know, generally having challenges with, and for you it's obviously, you know, your health and how you're managing that, and this new diagnosis and the treatment that you will be kind of having as we go forward. Obviously, as you mentioned, it's very recent days since the new diagnosis. Where is your headspace with that at the moment? Your Crohn's is under control and managed well, as you were saying, which is really good to hear. And that's a little different from when, you know, we were in touch some time ago. So that's really good to hear. But to have this other diagnosis, again, at a young age, if you felt that you could share what's going through your mind, because I can imagine this has a huge impact on one's mental health.
It does. I mean, I think I could categorically say it's made me depressed. When my physical health gets bad, my mental health, I think, worsens. And sometimes it just feels so hopeless and endless that, you know, I've been unwell for over a year now. You know, and people are always like, but it'll get better. But I've been listening to that for a year and a half and it's not getting better. And the more I learn about this disease is I find it's, you know, it's difficult to manage. And I just worry about, you know, actually, you know, will I ever be able to eat 3 meals of food again a day? Will I be able to eat normally again? And I think I'm slowly getting to the point where I'm realizing maybe this actually won't be the case. And this is the new normal I'm going to have to adjust to. You know, because potentially one of the things they're talking about is if I need it, I'm trialing this tube feed for like a few months. Potentially I could end up needing that slightly longer term or long term, which is a bit of a daunting thing to wrap your head around. You know, all I want to do is go back to work and have some kind of normality and like be able to go out and eat and not worry about if I'm going to end up in absolute agony. And yeah, it just gets a bit much sometimes. Like I think everyone's very you know, you learn to be very resilient with these kind of chronic conditions, but I think everyone's only got a limited supply, and there are days where I definitely feel like I'm getting to the bottom of the barrel and I struggle, and I'm very grateful for the friends and the family I have around me that support me, because you know they make it a lot easier, you know, to deal with and cope with, because it's almost like grieving for the person you used to be, and what's happening now, and actually learning to live within new limitations and expectations, and managing your own expectations. So, you know, hope for the best but prepare for the worst. You know,
you've articulated that incredibly well, honestly, Hastie. I was just listening to you and thinking of all the experiences that you've been through, and you know, acknowledging that this has an impact on your well-being, on your mental health, obviously as your physical health has been deteriorating, keeping that hope alive, managing expectations, support of friends, and you know, that is something which is really important, obviously, to hold on to. But there's a realism, I think, with chronic illnesses, that many people would say the kind of management of symptoms and seeing, you mentioned the term new normal for your managing of your condition, in a way that people are thinking of the new normal during this pandemic and what that's going to look like. And I'm interested to know what you talked a little bit about, some of the things that have helped you, and maybe a little more about, you know, what helps you now, what helps you manage things. How do you keep that sort of balance in your life? I mean, obviously you have tough days, and I hear that. But what do you find you can kind of turn to, that allows you to turn a little corner?
I mean, obviously, you know, when COVID wasn't around and things, you know, one of the big things I do is obviously see my friends, things like that. You know, and I try and get out and about, you know, and keep busy. Like I enjoy going fishing, a bit of clay pigeon shooting, but genuinely at the moment, like I feel too weak to go and do these things. I get so exhausted so easily. Like I worry about collapsing if I was going out, which actually has made my anxiety really awful at the moment, because I'm almost worried about becoming very unwell when I go out or something like that. And I don't think being indoors for nearly a whole year has helped, because I was never like that before. But yeah, I mean, I don't know, like, I suppose it's just escapism. Like, you know, I read a lot and sometimes I write, which can be quite cathartic. You know,
you used to blog as well, I know, Hastie. Are you continuing with that?
Do you know what? I haven't. I've got to be honest. Do you know what I have been doing? I've been making soap and bath bombs. It's a bit of an obscure hobby.
That's amazing.
I've been doing that, and that's quite entertaining.
Wow.
But in all honesty, I think I've been in such a negative headspace that I haven't wanted to do a lot of these things. And I found it quite difficult some days to drag myself up. And, you know, I won't lie, like I've gone through periods recently where I've spent 4 days in a row in bed watching TV doing nothing, because I don't see the point in getting out of bed. I don't have to go to work. I've got nothing to do. What's the point in my head? You know, I know that sounds maybe quite morbid and like offset, but
it sounds very human.
Yeah.
What struck me is it sounds very human, given what you've been going through. So what do you find helps you when you're at that point where, you know, you are in bed for a few days? What helps you kind of think, okay, I'm going to get up and make my bath bombs or do my soap? Or
sometimes it is literally just almost having that discussion with yourself in your head, going, you know what, this is not the end of the world. You will get through it. It's hard, but you will get there. You know, if it's not okay, it's not the end. You know, you can keep going. And sometimes it is a matter of just pulling yourself up by your bootstraps and going, right, come on, we're going to get up and do something today. And, you know, and it does make you feel better. But like, you know, going out with my couple of friends that I go fishing with, going overnight, you know, getting away and sitting by a lake for 24 hours and like watching sunsets, you know, it's nice to get away and relax and, you know, actually do something you enjoy. You know, even if that wipes me out for 24 hours, I'm like, you know what, I've gone out, had a nice time. I've seen my friends, socialized, probably vented to them, let off some steam. And I think that's a big thing for me. Like I stay in contact with my friends a lot. Like my phone has been a godsend through a pandemic. I'm on it. My mum thinks it's surgically attached to my hand, but I'm in contact with people all the time and I'm talking to my friends all the time. And, you know, it's a massive degree of support, you know, to various people and various things, you know.
It's a lifeline, isn't it, in many ways? It is,
100%. And I'd like to think that I try and be there for other people in the same sense that people are there for me, you know, and I'd like to think that I do the same for other people as I feel like they've done for me. Like, you know, I've got a friend who lives in America with Crohn's disease, you know, that I stay in contact with. You know, she's not been particularly well lately, you know, and it's nice to talk to people in similar situations to you. Like, so got like a WhatsApp group with like a few people that have all got Crohn's and things like that. And, you know, you can have a rant and a vent and know they understand what you're talking about. And I think it's just that support from friends and family is just second to none. And that's probably the biggest thing that, you know, gets you through. And
you know, I think you're absolutely right. And again, given what I know of you, Hastie, you're one of these people that, you know, gives and receives. And I think that's why, you know, there's that virtuous circle that you've created with people around you of support. And, you know, and I think anyone with a chronic illness, there's always that encouragement. I mean, sometimes people don't have as big a network and sometimes people do, but it's just tapping into and having those points of vent, as you mentioned, that you might know for the next 24 hours, you're going to have to pay for it by resting. But to make the decision sometimes to do something that actually is so good for your headspace, for your heart space, makes a huge difference. I'd be interested to know how this experience has changed you. You were diagnosed at 19, you were at university, you had 6 years of a very, very difficult time. You had your op, 3 years later, you had another op. A few years later, you've had this other diagnosis. I mean, that is a huge amount for anybody to process and digest, and inevitably circumstances changes. I mean, COVID has probably just changed many people, even if they haven't had things to deal with. So what have you experienced of change through this these circumstances?
It's definitely made me look at life very differently. And you know, it made me think, like, you know, if I could go back and do everything again, like I'd love to have gone into medicine, done something like that. I'd love to go and work for the ambulance service, like I was going to at one point, but the day before I was due to start training, I ended up in A&E having this surgery. So Spanish to that, but you know, it happens. But I think it makes your outlook on life very different, and you realise how much you take for granted sometimes. A friend of mine said a great quote, I'm not sure where it's from, said, health is a crown worn by all, but only the sick can see. You know, and
that's profound. That's incredibly profound. Can you just repeat that again?
So health is a crown worn by all that only the sick can see.
Yeah.
You know, and it makes you realize, you know, when you are fit and healthy, you kind of do take it for granted because it's just normal and it is what it is, you know. You know, but nowadays it's like, you know, I used to worry about you know, just say, I don't know, it changes the way you think. Like, you know, you're only here for a limited period of time, and you don't know when you're going to have that rug pulled out from under your feet, you know.
Yeah.
Could be today, could be tomorrow, could be 10 years. So you have to make the most of now and make the most of what you're here for, and like maybe not worry about little stuff so much, you know. There's bigger problems in the world than little things, and like I try not to get frustrated or stressed with things. You know, I'm sure I do like any normal person, but you know, in the grand scheme of things, let's not worry about it. It's not that important, you know. As long as you've got a roof over your head, food on your table, and some degree of health, you know, you're doing all right. You're doing a lot better than a lot of other people. Not that that negates your problems, but you know, it could be worse.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's really, really wise from a young person on your very broad shoulders with what you've dealt with and what you've been managing. And I really hear what you've said there, and thank you for sharing that. I'd like to just finally end with, if there's anyone watching this that is experiencing or has been going through or even recently diagnosed with either of these conditions, what might you like to say to them?
It's all very daunting, especially when you're waiting for a diagnosis or you've just received a new diagnosis and everything's a bit new. And, you know, I know, for example, with Crohn's, you know, some of the medications they start you on can sound terrifying with some of the side effects that some of them have, you know, some of them cause lymphoma and, you know, all sorts of things. But it's like, you know, all of this is weighed up. And you've got to trust, hopefully you've got a good like medical team around you that you can trust to, you know, do the right thing. But, you know, it will get better. Like, you might be going through hell at the moment, but with the right treatment and the right management, it will get better. You can have a quality of life. You know, it might take some time to get there, but you will get there. It will get better and it will be all right, you know. That's the main thing to take away from it, I reckon.
Yeah, and I think it couldn't be a better person to say that and share that than you, Hastie. So I really want to thank you for today. It's been
a pleasure.
It's been humbling. It's been wonderful to see you and reconnect with you. And you know, I certainly wish you all the very best in terms of the next treatment and the next part of your journey. And keep being amazing you, Hastie.
I don't know. I'll get there.
Thank you.
Thanks, Roopa. Take care.
Take care. Bye. I hope you found that a very thought-provoking and interesting talk. I'm incredibly grateful to Hastie for taking the time to chat. In spite of having some challenging days since he and I spoke earlier this week, he's also sent some links and slides which Maria has added to this video. Please share this episode far and wide, and not just to those that may be managing this illness, but to anyone you know that just wants to learn and understand more different people's life experiences. If there's ever a time to hear about the human experience and understand our fellow man, woman and child, it's now. Also, if you're someone watching that manages a chronic illness or knows someone who does that may be willing to chat with me, this is a shout out. Please do get in touch. I would like to do another 1 or 2, or perhaps even 3 programs on chronic illnesses. So feel free to contact me via YouTube or personally if we have direct contact with each other. The more we can understand each other and respect unique and also similar challenges that we have in life, the more I hope I can continue to be the change that I would like to see in this world, that I think many of us would like to see. Keep watching until the end for those all-important links and infographics from Hastie. Finally, a huge thank you to Maria for putting this together. Until next time, take care, stay safe everybody. I'll see you in a fortnight. Thank you.